She threw me out, the day after my son's funeral. No warning, no mercy, just a suitcase and the street. Then she smiled and said, "Enjoy being homeless." But what she didn't know was that my son had already planned everything. The call came at 3:17 a.m. I still remember the exact second, because that's when my life split in two. Before that call. And after it. "Mom." David's voice was weak. Struggling. My chest, "Something's wrong. I can't." And then silence. The line went dead. I kept saying his name. Over and over. No answer. By the time I reached the hospital, it was already over. My 40-year-old son gone. Massive heart attack, the doctor said. Calm. Clinical. Like he was reading from a script. Nothing they could do. Nothing. I stood there, frozen, trying to understand how a perfectly healthy man could just disappear. And right beside me was Stephanie, my daughter-in-law. She looked shocked. Of course she did. Anyone would. But there was something else too. Something I couldn't quite name. Not sadness. Not grief. Something colder. For a moment, I thought I saw relief. I pushed the thought away immediately. No, I told myself. You're just in shock. People grieve differently. That's what I kept repeating in my head. Some cry. Some shut down. Maybe she was just numb. Now what? I whispered. Stephanie straightened her shoulders. And just for a second, her mask slipped. Now we deal with reality, she said. Her tone. It wasn't broken. It wasn't emotional. It was sharp. Controlled. Cold. David's gone, she added. And I have decisions to make. A chill ran down my spine. We were never close, me and Stephanie. But David, he was the bridge between us. Now, that bridge was gone. I reached for her hand. We'll get through this together. She pulled away. We'll see about that. I should have listened. That was the first warning. But I didn't. I told myself she was grieving. That's what people do, right? They say things they don't mean. The next 3 days were a blur. Funeral arrangements. Phone calls. Relatives. I offered to help pay for everything. He was my son too, I said. But Stephanie refused. I'm his wife, she kept repeating. I know what he would have wanted. Fine. I stepped back. I focused on writing his eulogy, calling family, trying not to fall apart. Because losing a child, it's not like losing anything else. Something deeper. Something unnatural. The night before the funeral, I sat in David's old room, looking at pictures. His graduation. His wedding. Christmas. But something felt off. Something was missing. Then it hit me. There were no recent photos of me and him. None. Stephanie had removed them. Every single one. I stared at the empty spaces on the dresser. And for the first time, I felt it. Not grief. Not confusion. Something darker. Quiet realization. Maybe this wasn't just about loss. Maybe something else was already in motion. A soft knock came at the door. Stephanie stood there. But this time, she wasn't pretending. No fake sadness. No mask. Just a cold, calculating look. We need to talk, Eleanor. And something in my chest tightened. Because deep down, I already knew. Whatever she was about to say was going to change everything. The funeral was perfect. I'll give her that. Everything was flawless. The flowers elegant. The music. Exactly what David loved. The guests well managed. From the outside, it looked like a grieving wife honoring her husband. But if you listen closely, you'd hear something else. I was standing there, accepting condolences, when I heard her voice. Low, careful, talking to her sister behind the flowers. The life insurance alone will cover the mortgage for 2 years. I froze. And without the extra expenses, she added. Extra expenses? What did that even mean? Her sister asked the question I couldn't. What about Eleanor? Where will she go? And then, Stephanie laughed. Sharp. Cold. That's not my problem anymore. My heart dropped. She'll figure it out. Like the rest of us adults. In that moment, everything inside me went cold. I had been living with them for 2 years. After selling my own house, to help them with the down payment, David had insisted. Just temporary, Mom. but temporary turned into permanent. I cooked, cleaned, helped. I thought I was part of their home. But to her, I was just an extra expense. Eleanor. Stephanie's voice suddenly appeared beside me again. That same fake smile on her face. Can you help me in the kitchen? I followed her. Through the crowd. Through the whispers. Into the kitchen. She closed the door. Turned around. And just like that, the act was over. I'll be direct, she said. No emotion. No hesitation. This house is in David's name, which means it's mine now. My chest tightened. I need space, she continued. Time to grieve without complications. Complications. I repeated. You living here, she said flatly. It's not working anymore. It felt like someone punched me in the chest. Stephanie, we can figure something out. No. She raised her hand. I've already decided. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. I'll give you until tomorrow evening, she said. That's more than enough time to pack. Tomorrow. I stared at her. Waiting. Hoping. For even a flicker of humanity. Nothing. Where am I supposed to go? I asked quietly. She shrugged. You're a grown woman. You'll figure it out. And just like that, 67 years of life, reduced to a problem she didn't want to deal with. David would be horrified, I whispered. She looked me straight in the eyes. David's dead. Flat. Cold. Final. The sooner you accept that, the better. That was it. That was the moment. Everything broke. I packed my life into 4 suitcases. 4. That's all it took. Clothes. Few photos. Memories. That's what 67 years comes down to, apparently. I kept waiting. For her to come upstairs. To say she didn't mean it. To say I could stay just a little longer. She never came. Instead, at exactly 6 p.m. the next day, she stood at my door. Arms crossed. Time's up, Eleanor. No hesitation. No regret. Just impatience. We carried the bags in silence. Trip after trip. Like I was nothing more than furniture being moved out. When the last box was in my car, I turned to her. One last time. I wish I knew what I did wrong, I said. Maybe I could have fixed it. She didn't even blink. You didn't do anything wrong, she said. And for a second, I felt relief. Until she finished the sentence. You just exist. In my space. In my life. In my way. Every word sharper than the last. David felt sorry for you, she added. But I don't. That honesty. It hurt. But it was clean. No lies left. No pretending. Will there be a will reading? I asked. Did David leave anything? She almost laughed. Why would he leave you anything? You're not his wife. And it's not like you contributed financially. I almost smiled. $40,000. That's what I gave them. For that house. But in her mind, never happened. Of course, I said softly. Silly of me. And then, I drove away. No looking back. The hotel room smelled like chemicals and loneliness. I sat on the bed, staring at myself in the mirror. Who was I now? A widow. A mother without a child. Homeless. Alone. But then, something unexpected happened. A feeling. Not sadness. Not fear. Something else. Something sharp. Like a quiet voice saying, this isn't over. Stephanie thought she had won. She thought she got everything. But what she didn't know was that David had seen everything. And he had prepared. 2 weeks later, just when my savings were starting to run low, my phone rang. Mrs. Fairfield? Yes. This is James Morrison, your son's lawyer. I sat up. There will be a formal reading of David's will next Tuesday. And your presence is required. Required? That word hit differently. Are you sure? I asked. Stephanie said. Mrs. Fairfield, he interrupted gently. Your son specifically named you as a beneficiary. I froze. A beneficiary? David. Left me something? I stared at my phone long after the call ended. Maybe it was just something small. A watch. Old photos. Memories. But still, it meant something. It meant he didn't forget me. The following Tuesday, I saw Stephanie again. outside the lawyer's office. Dressed perfectly. Like always. Confident. Certain. Like she had already won. But something was about to change. And none of us knew just how much. At exactly 2:00 p.m. we walked into the lawyer's office. Stephanie sat confidently. Calm. Composed. Like she already knew the ending. Like everything belonged to her. Her brother sat beside her. Ready to take notes. I just sat quietly. Hands folded. Waiting. Mr. Morrison adjusted his glasses and began reading. The first part. Exactly what you'd expect. The house goes to Stephanie. She nodded. Satisfied. The cars, the retirement accounts, life insurance. Every line made her more comfortable, more certain. And every few seconds, she glanced at me. That same look. Like she'd already won. And honestly, for a moment, I thought she had. But then, Mr. Morrison paused. And something changed. His tone shifted. There is one final provision. The room went still. Stephanie leaned forward. Sharp. Alert. This was new. To my mother. My heart skipped. Eleanor Fairfield. Stephanie's smile faded. Who provided the down payment for our home? Her face tightened. I leave the contents of safety deposit box, E3D7. Silence. What? Stephanie snapped. What safety deposit box? Even I was confused. David never mentioned anything like that. Mr. Morrison looked up calmly. It was privately maintained, he said, and specifically designated for his mother. For me, I whispered. What's inside it? Her brother asked. I don't know, the lawyer replied. But access belongs to Mrs. Fairfield alone. Stephanie's face turned red. This is ridiculous. If there's anything valuable, it should be part of the estate. You're free to challenge it, Mr. Morrison said calmly. But the will is very clear. Stephanie stood up abruptly. This is a waste of time. But before she could leave, Mr. Morrison pulled out something else. A sealed envelope, he said. And instructions from your son. He handed it to me. Mrs. Fairfield. He wanted you to access the box personally. Stephanie's eyes locked onto that envelope. Like a predator. I'm coming with you to the bank, she said immediately. I'm afraid that's not possible, the lawyer replied. Access is restricted to Eleanor only. That's when I saw it. For the first time. Fear. Real fear. In Stephanie's eyes. Outside. She cornered me. Let's be reasonable, she said. Suddenly soft. Polite. Fake. Whatever's in that box, we should share it. Share. I almost laughed. You said David wouldn't leave me anything, I reminded her. She ignored that. You're homeless, she said quietly. You need me. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I don't think I need anything from you anymore. And I walked away. 3 days later, I stood inside the bank. In front of that box. My hands were shaking. The manager unlocked it with me. It's one of our larger boxes, she said. Your son visited it often for years. Years? My heart started racing. What had he been hiding? Preparing? Planning? I took the box into a private room, closed the door, and slowly opened it. The first thing I saw was a letter. My name on it. In David's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Mom. That one word almost broke me. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I had to stop, just for a second, to breathe. Then I kept going. And Stephanie has probably shown you who she really is. My heart sank. I'm sorry, but I'm not surprised. Every word hit deeper than the last. I've known for years what kind of person she is. Years? And I've been preparing for this. Preparing? For what? For you. I flipped the page. You gave us $40,000 for the house. My eyes filled with tears. I never forgot that. I invested that money for the past 5 years. My breath caught. Every dollar carefully grown. I looked down at the documents, bank statements, investment accounts, numbers, big numbers. My hands started shaking again. $185,000. I blinked. No, that couldn't be right. But it was. Every account. In my name. Accessible. Real. I picked up the letter again. This isn't just repayment, he wrote. It's your future. Tears streamed down my face. But there was more. I also documented everything. Everything. I opened the folder underneath. And that's when I saw it. Emails. Messages. Screenshots. Years of them. Stephanie. Laughing about me. Calling me a burden. Planning things. Behind my back. Even discussing how to push me out. My vision blurred. This wasn't just money. This was truth. Proof. Protection. And then, the last part of the letter. You deserve better, Mom. Take this and build a life where no one can make you feel unwanted again. I couldn't hold it anymore. I broke down. Right there in that room. Not from pain. Not from loss. But from something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. Because my son had seen everything. And he made sure I'd never be helpless again. As I walked out of the bank, my phone rang. Stephanie. Of course. Eleanor. Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. I was thinking, maybe you could come over for lunch? I smiled. Now I understood. She knew something had changed. We can talk about what you found, she added. I looked at my reflection in the car window. Calm. Steady. Different. I'll be there at noon, I said. 'Cause now, it was my turn. I arrived exactly at noon. Same house. Same door. But this time, everything felt different. Stephanie opened it with a smile. Warm. Welcoming. Fake. Eleanor, I'm so glad you came. Like nothing had ever happened. Like she hadn't thrown me out. The day after my son's funeral. I made your favorite, she said sweetly. Funny. Now she remembered what I liked. The table was perfectly set. Fine china. Fresh flowers. A performance. Every detail carefully planned. She poured tea. Made small talk. Waiting. Building up to the real reason I was there. Finally, she couldn't hold it anymore. So, she said, leaning forward. The safety deposit box. I took a slow sip of tea. Have you been thinking about it? I asked calmly. Of course, she said quickly. We're family. We should support each other. Family. That word again. Coming from her. It almost sounded like a joke. I agree, I said. Her eyes lit up instantly. She thought she had me. I was worried you might be upset, she continued. You know, about having to move out so quickly. So quickly. Like it was nothing. Grief affects people differently, I said quietly. Yes, exactly, she said relieved. Then she leaned in. Whatever David left you, we should combine it. Invest it together. I have great financial advisors. I almost smiled. What makes you think there was anything valuable? I asked. She hesitated. Just for a second. Well, David was always private, she said. Private. Interesting choice of words. I think David told you exactly what you needed to know, I replied. Something shifted in her expression. Crack. What did you find? She asked. There it was. The real question. But instead of answering, I reached into my bag. I brought you something, I said. A small gift. She opened it. A framed photo of David. Her face softened. Oh, this is lovely. You were a devoted wife, I said. Slowly. Deliberately. Her eyes snapped up to mine. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said. Just appreciating everything you did for him. Now the mask started slipping. Eleanor, stop being cryptic, she snapped. Just tell me what was in the box. I leaned back. Documents, I said calmly. What kind of documents? Financial records, messages, emails. I paused. Very interesting ones. The color drained from her face. Messages, she whispered. I pulled out my phone. Would you like to see one? And I showed her. A text. Her calling me a burden. Planning to turn my room into a gym. Her hand shot forward. I pulled the phone back. There are dozens, I said. Years of them. Her voice dropped. Stop. And then there's this one, I continued, where you talked about convincing David I should pay expenses when the mortgage was already covered. Stop, she shouted. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Thick. She was exposed. Completely. You want to know the best part? I said softly. David saved everything. Her breathing became uneven. What do you want? She asked. Finally. No more pretending. I don't want anything from you, I said. Then why are you doing this? I thought for a second. You already humiliated yourself, I said calmly. I'm just showing you the truth. She stared at me. Broken. But here's what you didn't understand, I continued. David saw everything. Every lie, every manipulation. And he protected me. Her hands trembled. You can't prove anything in court, she said weakly. I laughed. Court? I'm not taking you to court. That confused her. Then what do you want? I opened the folder. Placed it on the table. Everything you tried to hide is right here. Bank records. Emails. Proof. 5 years of truth. Her face went pale. And then, I said it. The money David invested. I pulled out my phone. Turned the screen toward her. $185,000. She froze. Completely. That's impossible, she whispered. It's my money, I said. The $40,000 I gave you grew into this. Her lips trembled. That should be mine. I'm his wife. And I'm his mother, I replied. Silence. Long. Heavy. You're just his mother, she muttered. And that was the moment everything became clear. I stood up. You're right, I said. I'm just his mother. The one who raised him, supported him. And the one he chose to protect. I picked up my bag. Walked toward the door. Wait, she cried. Now desperate. We can fix this. I stopped. Turned back. No, I said quietly. You can't fix what you are. She collapsed into the chair. Defeated. Completely. I can't lose everything, she whispered. You're not losing everything, I said. You're losing what was never yours. And then, I walked out. For the last time. She thought she won. When she threw me out. But the truth? My son had already made sure. I would never need her. Not her house. Not her money. Not her approval. Because even after he was gone, he still protected me. And in the end, she didn't lose because of me. She lost. Because of who she really was. Honestly, if I were in that situation, I wouldn't even call it revenge. I call it justice. Because sometimes, you don't have to fight people. You just have to let them reveal themselves. What would you have done in my place? Would you forgive her? Or walk away just like I did?